All right. Good night, everybody. Share the link. Share the link. Get into your Guyanese groups and share the link. Sorry I'm late. Was in a long meeting. So everybody share the link. I want to make a statement on behalf of CGID and BOR, as well as 12 Guyanese organizations that issued a statement today after a letter was sent to the Attorney General of the United States. So get into all your Guyanese groups, share the link. This is important information, especially for those of us who live in the diaspora. So everybody share the link, get into all your Guyanese groups, get on Twitter, get on your email, get on WhatsApp, share the link. All right, I'll do the introduction again, and when I come back, we'll read the statement. So share the link. I just want to give everybody that opportunity to share the link. All right. So I'll start. Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who will be watching for the first time, I know this statement is going to attract a lot of attention. So my name is Rickford Burke. I'm president of the Caribbean Guyana Institute for Democracy here in New York. Before I read the statement from from the Guyanese organizations here in the United States, I want to announce that on Thursday we'll have a meeting to discuss this very issue at 8 p.m. Thursday at 8 p.m. and we're going to announce the location. But earlier today, we saw a statement from the installed Attorney General, or the so-called Attorney General of Guyana, who announced that he has again asked the Federal Bureau of Investigations for help to crack down on persons on American soil who are allegedly spewing hate and fomenting terrorism. At first, when I read the statement without knowing who he was talking to, I thought he was making a statement about Trump supporters whom the PPP supports. But then he said, inciting and fomenting, spewing racial hate and inciting terrorism in Guyana. I'll come back to that. He said he informed the team that the government of Guyana has already lodged complaints with various important offices and agencies in the United States, including the FBI. And he's using the opportunity today when he met with a team of FBI officials to request action from the United States authorities against these perpetrators who operate with impunity from the United States. When contacted, I understand, by a journalist attached to Demerara Wave, he said that he would only say that the complaints were being actively considered. And it was announced today that he met with legal attaché, Mr. James Markley, FBI Assistant Legal Attaché for the Caribbean region, Mr. Derek Kirstenstein, and others, and an official from the State Department. Now, I noticed in one of the press reports, Demerara Wave, they named me, Rickford Burke. And they said that the Attorney General pointed to many persons who use social media platforms, in particular in the US, to allegedly spew racial hate and create ethnic strife among segments of the Guyanese population, inciting and aiding and abetting riotous conduct and even domestic terrorism. Again, one would think that the Attorney General is referring to the PPP. I'll come back to that. And then they make reference to some police bulletin, wanted bulletin that was issued for me. Of course, I do not live in the jurisdiction of Guyana. I never committed no crime. But before I respond, make some off-the-cuff remarks, let me read in part the statement that was issued today. 12 Guyanese U.S. diaspora organizations today wrote the United States Justice Department and several law enforcement agencies, drawing their attention to the activities of Guyana's Attorney General Anil Nandlall, who has been using his office to goad U.S. law enforcement to target his personal and political enemies in the United States for revenge. The organizations called for an investigation of Nandlall'S nefarious efforts. The letter was sent to the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, FBI Director Christopher Wray, and Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines. The letter was also copied to several members of the United States Congress, including Chairman of the Congressional Democratic Caucus, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Chairman of the Caribbean Caucus in the United States Congress, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, Chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Joyce Beatty, North Carolina Congressman and Democratic Chief Whip, Jim Clyburn, and the Chairman of the Senate House and Foreign Relations Committee, that's Gregory Meeks and Bob Menendez, and also the Chairman of the House and Senate Homeland Security Committees. And strategically, we also sent it to 20 other members of Congress. The letter was, of course, prompted by the statement by the Attorney General. The organization said, once again, the Attorney General, Anil Nandlall, is abusing his office to mislead U.S. law enforcement in an effort to pursue his personal and political vendetta. In fact, it is only his party and their government supporters in the United States that are guilty of these allegations, which the government and Mr. Nandlall himself have openly countenanced and encouraged. Guyana's PPP government supporters use social media to call African, Guyanese, and even members of Congress niggers, hungry belly dogs, etc., and call for us to be killed. At no time has the government of Guyana or Mr. Nandlall condemned these racist statements. Their supporters also use the vilest, most racist utterances against African Guyanese leaders and African American members of Congress who speak out against PPP racism in Guyana. Currently, there are several death threats against Black leaders on Government of Guyana and cabinet ministers' Facebook pages, including the Facebook page of the Guyana Police Force and on the Facebook page of President Irfan Ali. And they have deliberately refused to remove those threats, even though they have been reported both to the Commissioner of Police in Guyana and they have been reported to law enforcement here in the United States. We also informed the US officials in the letter that Guyanese boldly, at home and in the diaspora, call for accountability from the government, call for justice and equitable governance. And the PPP regime must, and have also called for the PPP regime to end its abuse of African Guyanese, as well as its apartheid method of governance. We said that the diaspora and Guyanese citizens, we said that the diaspora is forced to speak out because the PPP does not respect African Guyanese citizens and supporters of the opposition from all ethnicities. And they do not specifically respect the free speech rights of Black people in Guyana. We established in the letter that every opposition African Guyanese talk show host in Guyana who has spoken out in opposition to Mr. Nandlall's government has been arrested or killed in the instance of Ronald Waddle and Courtney Cummingway. We informed the Attorney General and the other officials of the United States that Mr. Nandlall does not like the fact that Guyanese in the diaspora, all of us, have called for an international investigation into allegations that he was involved in the assassination of political activist Courtney Cummingway just before the 2015 elections. Up to now, justice has not been served. Mr. Cummingway's death has never been investigated, and no one has been held to account. We informed the officials that the Attorney General's chambers, as well as the Guyana Police Force during the Granger administration, confirmed to CGID that Nandlall and one of his security staff were investigated in connection with this crime and that the investigation was never completed. We also pointed out that at the time of his appointment as Attorney General, Mr. Nandlall was charged and ordered by all of the courts in Guyana, including the Court of Appeal, to stand criminal to stand trial for criminal charges of theft of government assets. However, we informed them that the case was suddenly dropped or discontinued by by the Director of Public Prosecutions as a demonstration of political loyalty to the People's Progressive Party. We drew to the attention of the officials that Mr. Nandlall has made several vicious threats broadcast on national television and on social media against Guyanese living in the United States. And he has publicly boasted that he will get US law enforcement, he will have US law enforcement get persons in the United States who criticize him and send them back to Guyana so that he can deal with them, presumably so that these people can be killed. And I have been the subject of those threats. We noted that Mr. Nandlall has particularly singled me out, Rickford Burke, because I've been the most fierce and vocal critic of Nandlall and the PPP government. And I have boldly called for him to be investigated with regard not only to the Cameroon matter, but other matters. We informed them that the Attorney General hates the fact that he is being sued in the United States federal courts in the Eastern District of New York for slander and defamation against me. And let me pause here to say this. It is shocking and appalling that the Attorney General of Guyana can get on national television and behave in the most lawless and unbecoming manner, accusing me of being convicted in the United States for raping a child, for theft. He concocted all of these things. I have never been charged with a crime or convicted of a crime anywhere in the world, in any country. Mr. Nandlall cannot say the same thing. He was on trial for theft of government assets. And so he is being sued by a law firm here in New York for 100 million US dollars. And he will have to come to the United States and prove those allegations that he made against me on national television. He thought that because he's the Attorney General, he can get on national television in Guyana to try to smear me and attack me, and people will be scared to associate with me. I am an honorable, productive, law-abiding citizen, never convicted of a crime, never charged with a crime. So I don't know what Mr. Nandlall is talking about. We also informed the US officials that Nandlall does not like the fact that he was overheard by a law enforcement officer while Nandlall was visiting Queens, New York, after we had mounted a protest against him. And he was overheard by a law enforcement officer allegedly encouraging and plotting with his associates to eliminate and kill Rickford Burke. Get rid of him. We have to get rid of him. And he said words to those effect, as was reported to the police. This is not a report that was made by me. A law enforcement officer heard that statement and called the police. And he and Bar Jagdeo and others have said that we have made it up. And I want to inform the public that tape recordings were submitted to the NYPD. We also informed the law enforcement agencies and the Justice Department that when the New York City Police Department investigation became public, Nandlall directed the Guyana Police Force to interfere and attempt to obstruct with the NYPD investigation. Subsequently, the Guyana Police Force issued a false statement claiming that the NYPD had informed them that the complaint with regard to threats to have me killed was dismissed. Of course, this was false. It was completely false. And we left a meeting just a short while ago with the police department where we got an update with regard to that case. We also said in the letter that Nandlall was outraged because Guyanese in the diaspora have consistently demanded an investigation and that he be charged for making threats to send gunmen to kill journalists at Kaieteur News. And we informed them that these threats were recorded by journalists, then Kaieteur News journalist, Mr. Leonard Gadari, and that the recording is available on YouTube for all and sundry to hear and assess. We told the US Attorney General and others that the PPP have been attempting to turn the law on its head against political leaders and activists in Guyana and the diaspora who condemn their racism. So all of a sudden, they claim that every condemnation of their racist policies and practices is unlawful and it incites racial hostilities because they presume that they have some congenital or inalienable right to be racist and abusive to African Guyanese and opposition members and supporters. We also informed the United States Attorney General that the government of Guyana, the PPP government of Guyana, is conducting espionage against the United States by targeting US citizens who live in the United States with intelligence operations. And we have solid information of this. All of these tactics by the PPP are designed to intimidate citizens, including issuing a statement using the name of the FBI to intimidate us in the diaspora, because they don't want us to expose them as the most brutally racist and violently oppressive anti-Black government in the hemisphere. That's our opinion. It's not against the law to tell the PPP that they're the most racist government in the Western Hemisphere. We reiterate that today. They think that they can intimidate us and shut us up and stop us from criticizing their corruption and their racism. That will not happen. I want to declare today that we are unafraid and undeterred. Guyanese at home and abroad should continue to fearlessly confront PPP racism and work with the US administration, members of Congress, the Black Lives Matter organization, and other civil rights organization. And we have a team of civil rights organization we are organizing to go to Guyana later this year to make an assessment on PPP racism. And we work also with international partners to defeat the evil atrocity of PPP racism. We reaffirm our stance today against PPP racism. We also wrote a separate letter to our members of Congress here in New York State, asking them to ensure that the Justice Department and the White House follows up on this, our letter and our complaint that we filed with the Justice Department and the other agencies. Now, let me say this. These FBI agents or FBI officials and the State Department officials were in Guyana to discuss money laundering and all the other financial and other crimes associated with people who support the PPP. The Attorney General is not concerned about that. The Attorney General is not concerned with the fact that over 1,400 young Black men were murdered by death squads. The Attorney General is not concerned that they have not asked the FBI to help with the investigation of the murder of the Henry boys, of the murder of Orrin Boston by the Guyana Police Force, of the murder of Kevin Andrews by Guyana police officers, and recently of the murder of Quinton Bacchus. No, they're not interested in that. They're interested in people who are criticizing them on social media from the diaspora. We in the diaspora are not intimidated by the FBI. The FBI works to protect us who live in this country. We partner with law enforcement in this country. We welcome an investigation of the PPP government or of any allegation by the PPP government. We welcome it because the FBI will find out that is the only terrorist organization in Guyana is the PPP. The only terrorist organization in Guyana is the PPP. And the fact that they're invoking terrorism because they think that that will pique the interest of the FBI. And they have no evidence of that. Peruse anybody's statement from the diaspora and let them produce where people are inciting racial hostility. What is inciting racial hostility in Guyana are the racist policies and practices of the People's Progressive Party government and their refusal to ensure that African Guyanese and anybody else who don't support them get justice whenever there's a criminal act perpetrated against them. They manage the Guyana police force and the government only for their own people. That is what will incite racial hostility. They committed terrorism against the Henry family and the government of Guyana, including Anil Nandlall. They allegedly protected the perpetrators. Up to now, 2 young teenagers, 16 years old and 17 years old, were murdered, mutilated, and the real killers are still at large, terrorizing the Henry family. Why didn't Mr. Nandlall discuss that with the FBI? Up to this day, there has never been a proper investigation of the people of the death squads in Guyana, organized by the government under Barjagdeo. Why didn't Nandlall ask for help from the FBI with that? We know that several people, business people who support the PPP, finance the PPP, are under investigation by the FBI for money laundering, gold smuggling, funding international terrorism, drug trafficking. Why didn't Mr. Nandlall ask the FBI to wrap up those investigations and issue a report? He's not interested in that. He wants to intimidate African Guyanese in the diaspora because they're scared that our message and exposure of PPP racism is reaching the highest levels of the United States government. Many members of Congress have been speaking out. So we're at the stage in Guyana where the PPP government is governing as a racist ethnocracy. They're using mainly all the resources of the wealth of the country and the oil and gas funds for their own East Indian collective. That's a fact. That's a fact. And we must say it, and we will continue to say it. They do not fund regions that Black people live in adequately. Matter of fact, they've cut the funds. They're not giving Black contractors contracts. They're giving COVID relief, agriculture relief, flood relief, and all of these agriculture grants only to their East Indian supporters. That's a fact. That's not inciting. That's a fact. If you don't want us to talk about it, correct it, change it, govern for everybody. Don't complain. That's not how you address issues, divisive issues in a country, by trying to use law enforcement, in this case, the United States, to go after your political opponents who are complaining about your racism. You fix it. Nobody's scared of the FBI. Criminals are scared of the FBI. Nandlall should be scared of the FBI because he's a criminal. He has been charged and was on trial for crimes. He should be scared of the FBI. Correct those issues. We are not scared to be under investigation because we don't commit crimes. And they make all these statements because they feed into their racist sycophants so they could get on social media and attack us. If Nandlall is interested in people who are making threats and committing crimes on social media, he must start with PPP supporters. He must start with the Guyana Police Force that has a death threat against me currently on his Facebook page. He must start with Irfan Ali, who currently has a death threat that he's been promoted for 2 years, where somebody says, my head must be cut off and brought to him on a platter for a reward. In this country, that person would have been arrested and charged with a felony. On the Guyana Police Force Facebook page, There's a threat saying I'm wanted in Guyana, dead or alive. Bring me to Guyana. For what? Because I speak out against PPP racism. Do they really want people to start talking about the things they condone and countenance on social media? Let the FBI do an investigation of the comments and crimes that Guyanese and PPP supporters commit on social media. But the government of Guyana is so transparently corrupt that they think that the United States is Guyana, where law enforcement will just listen to them and take action against people. That's not how this country works. There's a rule of law here. There's a rule of law here. And so we will follow up, because what Anil Nandlall is doing is trying to use the federal agencies, law enforcement agency of the United States, to substitute for their death squads. Because under their previous government, they didn't do all of that. They just killed people. That's a fact. They had death squads that kill people that criticize them. They can't do that now. It's a different generation, and the world is watching. So what he wants to do now is ingratiate himself with U.S. law enforcement and try to substitute their death squads with U.S. law enforcement to go after and target their political opponents. That's not going to work. And the main fact that they could sit and lie to federal agents and tell them that we are committing inciting terrorism. I challenge them to name one person in the diaspora that is inciting terrorism or racial hostility. It's a tactic they're using to get us to shut up. We will not shut up. And they have been talking for a long time, plotting and planning to do all sorts of things and say, oh, we'll get the United States to extradite Rickford Burke so we could kill him. Well, they will have to kill me. They'll have to kill me because I would not stop talking. And we don't commit crimes, so there's no reason for me to be extradited. So I guess they're going to send somebody here to kill me. I just wanted to make those comments and draw the world's attention to the nefarious, evil work that the PUP is doing, the Attorney General is doing, attacking members of the diaspora. And I'm pretty sure they're also trying to undermine members of Congress. And let me say this. We also received a report from a person in law enforcement, and we have photographs, and we can release it if they want, where Nandlall has been using Guyanese in law enforcement here to get information on citizens in the diaspora. We are aware that they once met at Nautical Mile in Freeport, New York, met with those several agents who are Guyanese of East Indian descent. And we sent a letter to the FBI and the Justice Department about that. We also know that they have persons monitoring people in the diaspora, spying on them, committing espionage against the United States. And all of those things now would be on the investigation. I thank you for listening. And again, I said we'll probably have a public meeting on Thursday to discuss this matter further. And we are positive that our members of Congress will make a statement on this issue in short order. Thank you very much.